Hello everyone, how are you all? So welcome back to my video. So I'm glad to meet you all again. So in this video I'm going to talk very important topic, how to make big money in your stock market or any commodity market or any other market that you're actually dealing with as a trader. So but you have to first ponder your historical tradings that you have done so far and the losses that you made. Why did you make such losses? What actually the real cause of it? So you really need to study those part. So if you really want to understand why you are making such losses, that probably because you do not have good understanding of the chart itself, because the chart itself can convey to us a lot of meanings in it. Okay, so one of the things that we can learn from chart is to manage our risk and when to take position and when to actually to sell it off. These are things that actually you can actually find out from the chart itself. So it's not like some value that is plucked from the sky and we just invest on our wheel and all that. So that is not how investment works. Basically, investment works by investigating the company that you are trying to invest. That's the entry point. The second thing you have to do is when to start to do investment in the company itself. If, say for example, you've already found the company is good, then the next thing you have to decide is when to really start to invest in this company and when should I get out of the company and what you call gain your profits. Hopefully we gain profits out of it. So these are things that we really need to understand. So in this video I'm going to tell you how do we find if a particular graph has got power in it. So you have to watch my previous video. So in this video is actually a continuation to previous video, so you can go to my playlist and try to watch the video on the theory part as well as on the application part. So those are actually already posted in the YouTube. Okay, now I'm going to look at how to analyze power in our chart, and that itself will help us to minimize risk, identify when to start to enter into your share, and what can you expect or something like that. No. Okay, before we move on to the next section, can you help me to subscribe the channel as well as like and share to your friends so they all can benefit from this video. It's going to be very interesting. We're going to talk about how to earn big money from the chart. Okay, let's begin. So now so we're going to talk about uptrend again. Okay, so let me take the pen. So I'm going to talk about uptrend. Okay, how do we identify power in an uptrend? Okay, so there are two scenarios again. So this I'm going to talk about first scenario name now. Say example, you have a stock price going up, then it retraces so much, then it went up again, and then it retraces a little bit. Okay, then there's some sort of move after that. Okay, now we know that this, oh no, not really, I need to erase this. This is not really an up, well, it's actually an uptrend, right? So okay, let's look at it. This is going to be a low, so maybe use a different color. So this is our low, so this is our high, so this is higher low, right? And I believe this is the higher high, right? So now you can confirm it's an uptrend, right? So I'm gonna we just going to focus on uptrend, then I'll focus on a downtrend, and perhaps in a next video which I'll release, I'll focus on the sideways pattern. How do we identify power in those charts? So this time is uptrend and going to be downtrend after this. Okay, so in the uptrend, so this is the uptrend. So how do we know it's uptrend? So when you have higher high and higher low, that indicates it's an uptrend. Now okay, so to identify a power in your chart, you need to know you need to have two loops, or rather two yeah, we call it two loops. Okay, so what do we mean by loop? Okay, maybe I can show you. This is one loop. and this is a second loop. Okay, a loop is made of one round, so you must have one round of low, high, and a low again. So that gives you one round. Low, high, and low gives you one round. So another low, high, and this is another low. I'll call it higher low also. Gives us a second loop. So this is loop number 1. That's loop number 2, right? Now, it is advised that the loop should be long enough. So usually we prefer the loop here. So we prefer the loop here to be like 20 days. Okay, similarly here, we prefer it to be long, to be more reliable. So at least 20 days, like one month of trading. Say, for example, you have trading for 5 days. So it's roughly a 1 month of trading for each of the loop. So once you have a sufficient amount of data, that means you have 2 loops and it's already in an uptrend. So the next thing we can try to study is we can study what's the meaning of those lines. So we can try to study what's the meaning of those lines. So now, okay, this, when the price moves upward, right? Why a price will move upward? A price will move upward only when people wants to buy it, right? So that basically creates demand. So whenever you have a price moving outward, like in this scenario here, and then there's another one here is moving upward, it's basically creating demand. So we'll put it here as demand here. It's creating demand. But then when price moves down, right, it's creating, people don't want the share of the company. They basically want to sell it off. So that basically creates a supply in the market, right? So basically this part, I would say that this part is creating supply to the market. So here also creating supply to the market. Okay, now logically, economically, we would like to in order for a price to keep going up, there must be more demand than supply. Only then price keep going up, right? So now, how do we know, after we understood demand and supply in this particular chart, right? The next thing we should know is how to make use of this to identify power. If our chart, so power here basically means, actually in the previous video I already talked about the ability or the potentiality of a chart of in going up, right? So example, we said that if just a recap of the previous video, we said that if this particular uptrend is shorter and this one is longer, but I'm not sure what's the real height. So if this one is longer than the other one, then it basically, we said that in the previous video, there's a high potentiality for the trend to keep moving upward. So that's what we said. That's a kind of summary from the previous video. You can go to the previous video and try to go into more detail of it. But now, okay, now we already know it's going to be going up. Let's say we have a scenario that the second, as what we are seeing here, the second up move is actually longer. So, for example, it's longer. Therefore, we can say that it's going to be go upward, right? There's a probability of it going upward. Now, when we say it will go upward, the next question we should ask ourselves is, will it be able to move higher than the previous higher? Now, this is the high that we have here. So now the question is, so if you were to draw the line here, so will the move, this particular move, will it be able to go beyond the high of the previous? Okay, I got to undo it. Okay, so will it be able to go from the, oops, let me change my pen color. So will it be able to go higher than previous high? This is the previous high, higher high. So will we be able to get this next move to be going higher than the previous higher, right? So if it's able to move from the previous high, that means not only it is in an uptrend, it also a powerful uptrend. Okay, so that's the thing we want to find out. We already find out from the previous video in my playlist whether it's going to move upward, number one. The second question we're going to answer now, whether it's going to move upward but with a powerful move such that it will go beyond the previous high. Okay, that's the question we want to answer. But how do we know that the particular form in the chart itself, it has got more power? It's quite easy actually, The way we find out is actually we look at the retracement. So for example here, maybe I'll clear out the chart for a while so that it doesn't look so bad. Okay, now it's quite clear. Okay, now if you look at this up move, if you look at this particular up move, right, this up move is followed by a retracement, right? Followed by retracement. Now we want to study the retracement because the retracement will tell us whether a particular the next move is going to be powerful or not. So if say example here, if it retraces back to half of the previous price, so this is the full price, right? From here to here is a full price. So if this retraces down, let's say to the half of it, somewhere here, okay, somewhere here. But then the second loop, in the second loop, when the price moves up in second time, and then it retraces also there, so let's say it retraces also here. So the height of this particular move is, for example, from here to here. This is for the second loop. This is for the second loop. So you see the retracement there is up to here, which is it just retraces 1/4 of it, whereas in the previous case it retraces half of it. So that means they are less sellers, right? So as if you combine the first loop and the second loop, what we can find out is they are a bit more seller in the first round, but when it comes to second round, they are much lesser seller. That's why the supply is actually much lower compared to the previous one. So this directly tells us that they are actually more demand than supply. So when it comes to retracement, it doesn't retrace much. It only retraces quarter to compare to the previous. So this definitely tells us that there are more demands still there for this particular. Not many people are willing to sell this share, So that basically that means the demand is still there. So when such scenario happens, when the previous loop number one, this loop number one, right? Okay, in this loop number one, if it retraces 50%, but in loop number two, if it retraces only 25%, that tells us that this move, it's going to be an upward move. We already know it's going to be upward move because the second loop is longer, right? Okay, the move upward is longer, right, compared to, say example, it's not very evident from this particular line, but let's assume that the second this particular line is longer compared to the first line. Okay, from this first line. Okay, let's assume that. So that if you don't understand this part, you have to really watch the previous video of mine, because that will tell you how to do that measurement. Okay, so assuming the second loop here has got a longer upward move compared to the first one, we can conclude that it's in an upward move. It has a tendency to go further up. Whether it will reach it will beat, or rather it will go beyond the high of that, we can only know by the power. So we know the power because now we found that in the second loop there is only 25% retracement. In the first loop is 50% retracement, so they are much less retracement compared to the previous one. Therefore, there is still more demand to it. There are only less supply. Therefore, the price, very high chance, is going to go beyond the high of the that we have up to now. Okay, So this is the first scenario. I'm gonna talk about the second scenario now. Let's look at the second scenario. Oops. Okay, the second scenario. Okay, in the second scenario, let's say our chart is still upward movement, so we're still studying the upward pattern. It moves up, retraces a bit only, and then it moves another way around up, and then this time it retraces a lot. Okay, maybe it traces up to here. Okay, now this is uptrend because it's a high. Sorry, I made a mistake. It's a lower. And this is a low. That's a high. And this is a higher low. This is a higher high, right? So definitely it's going to be uptrend, right? Higher high, higher low is an uptrend. But now the question is, what we found out from this particular pattern is this particular length, not to say this particular length, this particular price move. This particular X is actually much more than, let's say, this particular Y. Okay, so say example, the Y is greater than the X, and we know from the previous video in my playlist that this is going to be an the uptrend is going to continue. Okay, the moment we notice that the second loop, so let me draw, this is our first loop and that's the second loop. So how we know it's the first loop? The idea is very simple. So you have low, high, low, that creates one loop. Another low, high, and another higher low creates a second loop. So a low followed by high followed by low creates a loop, one loop. Okay, so we have two loops here. So by analyzing the first loop, we notice that the height of its move is only x. X is the difference of the low and the high price. Then for the higher low and higher high, the second loop, we notice that the price move y amount. So let's say the y is greater than x, so therefore we can make conclusion that it is still in a upward move. So it's a strong upward move. We call it strong upward move. By the way, this technique is known as the arts technique. So this technique is known as so we are actually trying to study this arts technique, how to find out power in a chart. Okay, so we know that this is a strong upward, but now is it strong enough for the next move here? Is it strong enough for it to beat the high here, the higher high here? Is it strong enough to beat the higher high? That's the question to be asked. Okay, so we know it's in a strong move, but is it strong enough to beat the higher high? Okay, now how do we do that? So again, the idea is to look at the retracement. So this is the retracement in the first loop. Okay, number one retracement, I'll call it. So, and this one is the retracement number 2, right? And you can see evidently from your eye that for the first case, it only retraces about 25%, but in the second case, it retraces more than 50%. Right? It went down more than 50%, right? Of the y. So we are comparing to the y. Okay, so it went down more than 50% of the y. In the first loop, it went down 25% of the x, right? Now, what we can conclude is the in the second round they were more supply. In the first round there were less supply. That's what we can conclude. So because in the second round there were more supply, that means there are people who, there are shareholders who are actually eagering to sell the share. That's why it actually pulled down a bit, more than 50% in the second round. So we say that by logic the tendency of the next move, even though it's going to be moving to upward, because we noticed that the y is greater than x, right? So even though we said that the move is going to move upward, we made a conclusion that it's going to move upward, and in fact we said that it's going to be strong move upward. But the thing is, it's not strong. It may not be strong enough to go beyond the high here, the high that we have here. Because why? Because in the second loop the retracement was more than 50%. That means there were more sellers compared to the first round, which is actually only 25% who wants to sell. Okay, so because there are more sellers there recently, so it's very unlikely for we say that it doesn't have much power, therefore it's very unlikely for it to go to beat the high. Okay, it is very unlikely to beat the high. Okay, now we can use so I think in this video, because I think it's a bit 20 minutes already, so I'll create the down part, the downward turn, analyzing the downward turn in the second video. I will do another video. So now before I conclude, right, I just want to tell, okay, what benefit do we get out of analyzing this? Okay, so now one is risk management. So now if you are at this point, now the question is, you are now, because you already know by history, you already analyze this portion of your chart. Now you are somewhere here, the price is somewhat moving up. Now the key question that will have in your mind is, should I invest? If I should invest, how much should I invest, right? So that will be the key question, right? Now we know that because the y is greater than x. Okay, if you don't understand this part, you really need to watch the previous video, because I explained this in the previous video, in the playlist. It can be found in the playlist. It's called the strength of the market. Okay, now here we know that the market has got strength. That means it will move up. But okay, so that means you can invest. Okay, you can invest, but should you invest a lot? The answer is no, because you know why? Because yeah, it's going to move up, but it's not going to move a lot. So you can invest a bit just to take the opportunity, but to earn big money, really no, because there are more risks, because this particular chart does not have power. So the conclusion we're going to make in this chart, okay, no power. Why? Because it is 50%. The second retracement is 50%, more than 50%, whereas in the first round it retraces only 25%, and second round retracement, which is more than 50%, makes it difficult for it to have power to go even beyond up. Okay, so therefore we conclude that it is no power, because there are more sellers recently, right? So by knowing this, you can say, okay, I'm going to just play a bit of money, I'm not going to put a lot of money. In fact, some of you may even don't want to touch it, right? Because it doesn't have any power. So rather you may want to look at some other charts of some other company which actually more promising, that in a way that it is uptrend, strong uptrend, as well as it has power to move upward, right? So you may only want to risk your money to a strong uptrend, and that has a strong power such that it will go beyond the previous high. So you see, now I'm able to manage money. I'm able to take a calculated risk to do my investment. You see, so that's how you can actually minimize your losses. Okay, so because the chart itself tells us a lot. It tells us what is the demand that we have in the market, what's the supply we have in the market, and also it tells us the likelihood. I use the word likelihood, it's not something confirmed. It's likelihood of what will be the next move like. See, the chart is already telling us Okay, so we should study the chart and try to take advantage of that and to position it properly so that we are in advantageous position. Okay, so we will do a second video. In the second video of this, I will explain about downtrend, how to find whether a downtrend is going to have power to keep moving downward. Okay, so see you in the next video. Thank you.